Good evening, everybody. This is your host, Sarfo-Mensah, and welcome to a brand new and special Memorial Day episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. And I'm just so excited today because we have a phenomenal guest who's going to be speaking with us this evening. And her resume is just so extensive that there's just not enough time to just go through the accomplishments and everything that she's been doing in the field of education. But I'm going to take this time to just share a few things about her. Our guest tonight is Dr. Marquita S. She is a teacher empowerment specialist. She is a award-winning STEM educator. She's an author. She's a visionary. And she doesn't know this, but she is a mentor from afar. Every time I watch her, she is always in this mind of innovation, always thinking of ways in which she can impact students, impact teachers, impact school districts worldwide. And I'm just so inspired by her work and everything that she's doing, even during this time of COVID-19, where a lot of learning has paused and you have school districts and other educational entities trying to find ways to rectify the issues and try to get students more engaged in online learning. But Dr. Blaze has figured that out. She's been doing a series of workshops, and I don't want to say too much and steal her thunder. I'm just going to give her a chance to just share what she's been doing, as well as how she got to where she is today. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in Dr. Marquita Blaze to the show. Welcome, Dr. Blaze.
Good evening, Kwame. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. How you been?
I'm doing well. What are we going on here? About 12 weeks into quarantine, but I'm doing well, Kwame. I'm busier than ever.
No, I see that because I've been following you, and I'm always following you just to see what you're doing because it really inspires me and pushes me to do more.
Oh, I appreciate that, but you inspire
Yeah.
me as well.
Thank you, thank you. But let's get right into the conversation because there is so much we need to talk about, and you have such an amazing journey that has had its ups and downs. We talk about your how you've navigated space and education. So I want to give you a chance to just share a little bit about yourself and what brought you into this field of education.
So, first of all, Kwame, I'm a small town girl. I'm from Griffin, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half, maybe hour 15 minutes south of Atlanta. And growing up here, there were not a whole lot of options of things to be when you grew up, but I always knew that I wanted to grow up to be a teacher because I had some really phenomenal teachers as a child, and because my mom just instilled in me a love of learning and a love of going to school. And so that was just something I always aspired to be as a kid.
Nice. And did you have any teachers during your childhood that really inspired you and pushed you to go down this path?
I would say pretty much all of them in some way or another. Not any one teacher in particular that I could say, oh, she exactly made me want to be a teacher. But I will say the teacher that made me want to go into science was my freshman biology professor at Georgia State University. Prior to that, I wanted to be a language arts teacher because I loved reading and writing. I was a very quiet child, reserved. I kept to myself. So books were just my way of exploring the world and interacting with everyone else, but I didn't physically have to do that. But when
Mm-hmm.
I got to Georgia State, I had one science requirement, and I figured I would just take it the first semester and get it out of the way. But my professor walked in that first day, and she was so put together. physically she had it together, but intellectually she also had it together. And she was the first Black woman that I ever saw or met in person who had a PhD, and in science no less. And biology was not the science that I enjoyed in high school. It was actually chemistry. But everything about her and the way she taught the course converted me. And that, by the end of my first semester in college, I decided I did not want to teach language arts. I wanted to teach science.
Wow. And that's just inspiring to hear, because we know that there aren't enough Black women in the STEM fields, particularly when we talk about science. So to see a Black woman with a PhD in a science field, a STEM field for that matter,
right,
that has to inspire you as a young Black woman at that time. You have to be inspired by that, because it's such a rarity to see, probably even back then.
Oh, it was. And I actually
Yeah.
thought I was going to get a PhD in biology at that time. I thought I was going to do everything just like her. I thought I would also become a college level biology professor as well. And then what moved me from biology to chemistry, which was the science that I loved in high school, but I didn't realize how possible it was for me to be a chemist of sorts. I knew that I just liked the class in high school, but Kwame, the bells didn't go off and the dots were not connected that I should try to teach that. Don't even ask me why, but I think it was my junior year in college when I took organic chemistry. My professor, again, was another Black PhD. He was Jamaican, and that was the first time I ever met a Jamaican person. Again, I'm from a small town, right? So
Right.
there was not a lot of diversity. And so that was my first time meeting a Jamaican, and I was just intrigued by him as well. First of all, the accent had me, and then organic chemistry. And I was just, I don't know, I don't even have a word for it, Kwame, but he knew it so well and he made it so understandable. And that was the one course that everybody said, oh, you're going to hate organic chemistry. But I was there, front row center, every class. And at that point, he made me remember that I loved chemistry. And then he made it possible in my mind that, oh, I probably actually don't even want to teach biology. I will teach it, but it's chemistry. That's the thing that I really, really, really want to do. So those two teachers, I would say, had the biggest impact on what I would ultimately teach.
Now, before you started powerful teaching strategies and all these other ventures you're engaging in, you were a high school chemistry teacher, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I know that it came with its ups and downs, and there were times that were pretty traumatic, but it did lead to the Mediocre Teacher Project.
Yep.
So I want to just give you a chance to just share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I went through so many things throughout my teaching career. I was in the classroom for a total of 16 years, but I have to say there were more ups than downs, but it's just that the downs were so far down
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes I lost sight of the things that really made me fall in love with teaching in the first place. And so some of those were self-imposed, just me making the wrong decision in terms of where I would teach and what path my career should take. And in addition to that, I've dealt with bullying from administrators. I've dealt with, I don't know what the word is, but when people, I've been labeled aggressive in the workplace, Kwame. I've been labeled intimidating. I know. Look, exactly. Nothing about me is aggressive, but what it is because I think I have a very calm and conservative demeanor, and
Yes.
so, but when you stand up for yourself, then and people don't expect you to be that way, then all of a sudden now you become aggressive. So I had to learn how to speak up for myself in such a way that I wasn't being labeled, but also I still had to hold my ground and speak up for myself. So, some spaces that I was in, I kind of realized this may not be the best environment for my personality. So between personal issues with my health, I just experienced a very low point in teaching where I literally was just showing up every day, collecting the check, staying on the payroll so I could keep getting my insurance so that I could get the health care that I needed. But I was really at a point where I was ineffective to my students on a consistent basis. And it stayed that way for a while until I had to make some tough decisions, which was ultimately to finally take medical leave. And then while I was on medical leave, I realized that it probably would be best that I just not go back. And so I resigned in 2016 and started my business, Dr. Blade's Consulting, which initially the mission was to help teachers deal with burnout because that was my most recent experience in teaching. And so that's how the Mediocre Teacher Project was born.
Wow. And it started off a as a company for burnout, teacher burnout. And as you mentioned, so many ventures and projects have been born since then. I mean, we could go on and on about the projects. Girlfriend Collective, POWARRful Teaching Strategies. I mean, there are just so many different things we can talk about, but I do want to stay on the empowerment piece and talk about the Girlfriend Collective because it has been a highly successful series. I don't know how many books you have in the series, but I know that a lot of women authors and professionals have contributed mightily to the success of this series. I have two copies of the books, and my wife has them, so we're fans of the Girlfriend Collective. But if you could just share a little bit about what that is and what is the ultimate mission of that collective.
I will. So a little backstory with the Girlfriend Collective, and it's so ironic. Before I started my first year teaching, I took a job working a summer program where I would be teaching students who were interested in becoming doctors. And in that program, my manager at the time was Maureen Carnegie Baker, who is now my business partner in the Girlfriend Collective. But when I met her back then, I did everything I could to stay out of Maureen's way. I thought she was the meanest person in the world. I wanted nothing to do with her. But fast forward a couple of summers after that, and she gave me my first opportunity as an educational leader to go into a management position with this program. And that's where I started training teachers, Kwame. So, okay, that's how I first got into this whole giving professional development thing during the summer program. Fast forward, Maureen and I developed a very natural friendship that just grew into a true sisterhood. And so we started the Girlfriend Collective as a social venture, just a way to get women together and give them an outlet to express themselves in a non-threatening environment. And we used to host events around the greater Atlanta area where we just brought women out and had a good time. And that was in 2011. We talked about doing a book. And the book, for whatever reason, I think things started happening. So, yes, around this time, too, that's when my teaching career started to kind of go up and down. Life was happening to me. Life was happening to the third business partner that Maureen and I had at that time. And so the Girlfriend Collective wasn't even the name back then. It was the Girlfriend Spot. And it just kind of fizzled out. But in 2018, after I launched Chronicles of the Chronically Ill and the Mediocre Teacher Project, Maureen kind of brought up the fact that we had played around with a book idea 7 years prior. And I said to her, well, now that I've done these two anthologies, I think that's the approach that we should take to this book for the Girlfriend Spot. And one conversation led to us recruiting women. which led to Volume 1, which led to the formation of the Girlfriend Collective. And now here we are 4 volumes later, and 56 women have contributed across those 4 volumes. Many of them were first-time authors.
Wow. And also to mention, some of them aren't even from the U.S. Some of them were from abroad.
Do we have any authors
I
abroad?
felt like there was one from abroad, like maybe the UK.
I think if she lived there for a while, if nothing else, I think
Okay.
I'm talking about it. She may have lived there for a while.
But either way, that is still phenomenal effort. And before the show is over, we'll have a chance to go into your website and people can actually see the products and the books so they can purchase. But let's fast forward because you've done the Girlfriend Collective. We talked about Mediocre Project, but most recently, you've really been focusing on teachers and making sure that they have the tools and strategies necessary to be successful during this online learning phase we're going through during COVID-19. So I wanted to give you a chance to just talk about powerful teaching strategies. First of all, what does the acronym POWAR mean in powerful, and what is the mission of this initiative?
Yeah. So when I first started the consulting business, I was relatively unknown. So I was coming straight out of the classroom. I had done some district level things in a few of the districts that I worked for because I also hopped around Metro Atlanta a lot as a teacher. But I never had a position outside of the classroom level. So I was relatively unknown. And I was hitting the national conference circuit pretty hard. But Kwame, my presentations were kind of all over the place. Like I would share one strategy here, one strategy there, another one somewhere else. But it finally dawned on me that all of my strategies have the same thing in common. And that is the focus on 6 key skills that I feel like students need, not just in the STEM courses, but really for life in general. So POWER stands for predict, observe, write, analyze, research, and report. And pretty much any lesson I teach, any strategy I use, those 6 components are going to show up in there somewhere. So I just decided to wrap everything under this umbrella, call it powerful teaching. And that's what I've really been promoting strongly, I would say, at least for the last year and a half. And most recently, here, since we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, I decided that as I was watching teachers really being thrown into distance learning and districts not even having the time and possibly the resources to get them off on a good foot. But I realized that I had so much experience teaching and training people online throughout the other things that I've done in the past that if I don't have my own students to directly impact, the least I could do is put my strategies in the hands of teachers who could then pass them on to their students. So that's what I have been trying to do through a series of both free and paid trainings. So some people have enrolled in a 12-week masterclass with me, and then some people have just been attending my pop-up teachings that I've been doing here and there.
Absolutely. And you've also most recently decided, you know what, I've been focusing a lot on the teachers, but now I need to direct my attention to the students because school year is ending in many states and they need something to do. With knowing that a lot of summer camps are not going to be happening this summer, they need something to do to stay engaged. So, are there any future projects that are going to be taking place to focus on those students who do need something constructive to do?
Absolutely. Another point of irony, Kwame, is that Maureen and I talked about starting our own summer camp for so many years.
Mm,
And it's amazing how these times that we are in now has really moved me to act on some things that I probably wanted to be doing a long time ago. With that being said, also, when I am out doing powerful teaching and I'm working with science teachers across the country, when I dialogue with them and they bounce ideas off of me for their lessons and they're asking me ways that they can incorporate my strategies into what they're doing, it honestly makes me excited and jealous. And it made me realize how much I miss that one-on-one contact with students. And so for all of those reasons, I will be launching a virtual STEM camp that will start in July. And our first two courses will focus on both biology and chemistry, of course, and those will be wrapped around my powerful teaching strategies.
Awesome. And it's not going to be just your regular science class where they sit down in front of a computer and you lecture them for 40, 45 minutes to an hour. I'm sure it's going to be very engaging knowing you.
Highly engaging. The
There you
students will
go.
be doing more work than I will. I'm just a facilitator. And I will point them in the direction that they should start, and then they will be making meanings of these experiences. So parents can really expect for there to be some topics that I present, but no two students will walk away from this virtual camp having learned the exact same set of things, because our investigations will be open ended to a point where students will kind of chart their own path and decide what they want to learn.
And what are the age groups that you're targeting? Is it middle school, elementary, high school?
Well, I am a 6 through 12 teacher by training, but I would say that upper elementary will definitely be able to take advantage of these courses. Kwame, I'm also special education certified. So every time I teach, I make sure that I'm building in a certain level of scaffolds and support. A student could literally come to me with zero math background, zero science background, and be just as successful in chemistry as someone who has been studying it for 2 or 3 years. So upper elementary could definitely join in as well.
Well, awesome. And just for our parents and our non educators, this is also a show where we do educate. So we use any educational terminology. I feel like we have a responsibility to just explain to them what it is. So when we talk about scaffolds, we're just talking about those supports that we put in place for students in order for them to be successful and to reach their goals. And usually it's associated with our special education students, but any students, whether they have an IEP or not, could benefit from the scaffold. So for our non educators, for our parents who just want to know what the term is, that's what we mean by scaffolds.
Definitely, Kwame. And if I could just piggyback off of that, our gifted students, whether they're labeled gifted or not, they need scaffolding too,
Yes.
because one of the things with our gifted populations is that they are accustomed to being told exactly what to do, and they're very good at following instructions. Sometimes they are not as comfortable with inquiry based learning, where we kind of allow the students to explore first before we explain the concepts. So they need scaffolding as well, because they're used to a lot of structure. And
Mm-hmm.
when we're doing inquiry based, sometimes there's not a lot of structure there.
No, and that's very true. That's very true. Um, they're so used to having teachers tell them exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I think that's an issue that many schools nationwide have had, this idea of teachers just doing the heavy lifting and really holding students' hands. And we do it because we want them to succeed, but I think we do it to a fault to where we don't allow the students that freedom to really explore what they're learning. And I think that in itself can be detrimental to their development.
Absolutely.
Hello, Dr. Blades.
Hey, Kwame, it seems like we cut out for a second there. Kwame, can you hear me?
Hello, Dr. Blades.
Hello, I'm
Can you hear me?
here. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I think we're breaking up a little bit. All right, can you still hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, but you're going in and out. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So so I know we've been talking about the virtual camp and just the different investigations that they're doing. I think that just speaks to what you mean by inquiry based. So a lot of what they're going to be doing is pretty much going to be student led. You'll give some direction as to where they're going to go and how they're going to complete these investigations, but it's very much a hands off approach you're taking. Eh,
Yes. So I will present the students with a problem that they need to solve. We will collectively discuss some possible solutions. I may point them to some research resources to get them started. And then it will be up to them to plan how they're going to solve this problem. And it will be up to them to design the investigations, and they will test their solutions. And I will communicate with them the results of those tests, and we'll collectively decide if the solutions that they've come up with are viable ones. And from there, we'll go into some more scientific things as well as for example, how to put together a lab report, how to communicate those results, and things of that nature.
Oh, okay. And when can parents start signing up for the virtual camps? Is there a timeline already in place for parents and students to sign up for the camp?
Sign up will begin the first week in June. That's next week. Yeah, the first week in June, parents will be able to sign up.
Awesome. And all that can be found on the website.
It's not on there yet, but it will be on drmarquitablades.com.
All right. Now let's move forward and talk about next steps and how we can move forward through this pandemic. Now, at some point, we're going to have to go back to school. Teachers are going to have to go back to school, students as well. And there's going to be a transition period where we're going to have to get back into that normal mode of learning. So I wanted to find out from you, knowing what teachers have gone through and students as well, and parents, we'll throw them in there as well. What would be the best way for school districts to transition in the aftermath of COVID-19?
I think the best way to transition back will be through somewhat of a reverse gradual release. We need to gradually phase students back into the school building, primarily because we still have to figure out the whole social distancing aspect and how that's going to work. And you and I both know, Kwame, that bringing 32 students into a classroom and spacing them 6 feet apart is a challenge in and of itself, not to mention all of the other challenges that we're going to have to deal with, including learning loss and re-socialization, which is something that we're not talking a lot about,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the extended effects of household trauma that some students are experiencing, and the newfound trauma that some kids will face having to go back to school, because being at home now has been a relief for them and they've been able to kind of learn at their own pace and thrive with distance learning. So there will be a whole lot of moving parts that we need to consider. I think the best solution is that we need to look at what some other countries have been doing all along, and that's an AM/PM model where the students only go to school for half a day. And
Mm-hmm.
even within that AM/PM model, I think there should still be a blended learning component where some students can choose to continue to primarily learn at home if that's what they want to do. But regardless of how we go back, Kwame, I think the way that we have embraced technology and the way that we have incorporated so many digital tools in our learning, those things still need to be present and they still need to show up in our instruction, even if we're doing it in a physical building, because ultimately we are living in a digital global society and students are going to need these skills in order to compete on the next level once they finish their secondary education.
And you're so right about this because, at least in my experience, I'm sure it was the same for you. There are a lot of policies in our schools and districts stating that all electronic devices need to be out of sight, keep them in the lockers. We don't want to see them in the classrooms. And I always found that to be confusing because we're in the Generation Z era, we're in the digital native era where all of our students who are millennials are interacting with technology more than actual humans. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's the fact that it is essential, it is mandatory that we have these tools in our classrooms. And we might need to make some amendments to some of those policies that have been in existence for so long, because that has deterred many teachers from being more pedagogically sound in their practice because they're not able to have that license to just pull out an app and have students interact with it or use social media to engage students more, right?
Absolutely.
So,
I've been
yeah.
reprimanded a lot for allowing kids to use devices. And then when I explained to administration that, oh, that's for a lesson, then I was still reprimanded, like, you can't do that. So,
Yeah, but then at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure when it came time to look at the scores, the test scores, the assessments, they probably left you alone after they saw the end results.
I don't know, Kwame.
I'm just
I don't know.
That's what I'm envisioning. I'm just envisioning that because that's been the case for a lot of people who have gone that route as you did. But then once the results came, then administrators just stepped back and said, "Okay, you got this. We'll give you your space to do what you have to do." And then eventually they'll try to encourage other teachers to do what you're doing. And now you're like a hero. And I've
You
seen this.
know,
Yeah.
the most progressive school I worked in terms of technology was an alternative school, if you can imagine, Kwame.
Mm-hmm.
We were 1-to-1. It was an alternative school, and the district was 1-to-1. And so the population that you wouldn't think that could do distance learning, they were doing that. That was 2015, 2016, and we had students on a blended learning model, and it worked really, really well for them. Our administration was very liberal in how we incorporated technology, and it made a huge difference in terms of students being able to complete assignments in a timely fashion, even if they weren't able to come to school. So I learned a lot in that environment that a lot of schools could definitely take note of.
Oh no, for sure, for sure. And I'm just looking at the comments, and a lot of people are responding to just the idea of schools just needing to shift their mindset
Yeah.
in order to lead students as well as teachers. So yes, thank you, Dr. Napper, for that comment. And I think that's what has to happen. I don't know why we're in resistance of this. I mean, a lot of these issues that we're seeing are issues that have always been there. They're not new issues.
Right.
And when we talk about the possibilities of a staggered blended learning approach, we have to talk about money and the way that it's allocated to different districts. We already know that if you go to the more affluent parts of different states, these are things that are already in place. They've been implemented. They're part of their normal operation, if you will. But if you go to the urban school districts, that's not always the case. There are more restrictions as far as the usage of computers, laptops, and electronic devices because there's a lack of trust as far as how students will use them. It comes down to trust. And I think we need to do more teaching, more modeling of how to use those devices as opposed to ways to restrict students from using them in a way that's going to push their learning forward.
And that's all it comes down to, Kwame. Just like with anything else that we teach the students, we have to teach them how to use the devices, how to use the platforms. And we can do that. The same way we open school and we teach policies and procedures the first week, and we teach the students our classroom culture and what hand signs they should hold up when they want to speak versus when they want to use the restroom. And we teach them how to walk to the cafeteria. We can do the same thing and teach them how to use their devices and how to operate platforms. It's just a matter of what we want to focus our attention on.
No, absolutely. And we could talk about this all day long.
Oh, I know.
There's still many questions that need to be answered about how we're going to proceed from this point on. And there's some school districts who are seriously considering continuing online learning going into the fall, where pretty much all the students are still at home and we're doing what we've been doing for the past couple of months. It's a real possibility.
Well, and it should be an option for those students who are thriving in the distance learning environment. I don't feel that they should be pushed back into spaces where they are going to be bullied, where they are going to experience social anxiety and additional traumas that will cause them to not be able to perform academically in a way that they could. I know that there is a socialization aspect that is required, but there are tons of activities that kids can do to socialize with other kids. They don't have to always get that from school. So it definitely needs to be an option for the students that it's working for, because we do talk about differentiated instruction and personalized learning. So if this is working for a student, I can't imagine why we would want to take them out of that environment and place them back into one where they're not able to thrive.
No, absolutely. So we do need to focus on how we differentiate the learning experiences of our students, where some are able to operate better within their home, and some do need the in-person interaction with their teachers. So we do have to find ways to diversify our practices. But Dr. Blades, we could talk about this all day, but I know we're gonna have to do a part two of this conversation because there's still so much to unpack. But I do want to thank you for coming on to the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and build with you. But before you do go, I do want to give you a chance to just show us your website and to walk us through some of the features, and also to give people information on how they can follow you on social media.
All right. So if you want to click through a couple of tabs on my website, if you click on the POWARRful Teaching tab, that is where people can find all of or some of the courses that I've been teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have a few replays that are posted there, and there are some more that will come. Let's see what else is there. I think that's about it there. Replays of some of the trainings. If you scroll back up to the navigation bar under services, I talk about the different things that I offer, which are professional development services and consulting for schools, school districts, and educational programs, keynote presentations, as well as consulting services for those who are looking to publish. Kwame, we didn't even talk about the
Oh, this book was familiar.
that you and I are working on.
Yes.
With 6 other very talented STEM educators from around the nation, our STEM instructional strategies book. But Kwame, we will save that for another conversation. So you definitely will have to have me back on.
No, for sure, for sure. But you're just so phenomenal, and there are so many wonderful things to talk to you about. There's just not enough time to talk about everything you're doing because you're just doing so
Absolutely.
much, and you're impacting so many people.
Well, I appreciate you, Kwame. People can get in touch with me on Facebook, POWARRful Teaching, POWARRful, POWARRful Teaching on Facebook, as well as POWARRful Teaching on Instagram. On Twitter, I am Dr. M. Blades. And I do accept friend requests from educators, so they can feel free to connect with me on my personal page, Marquita Smith Blades.
Yes. And all that information can be found in the description of the post. So all of her handles are there for anyone who wants to follow her right now. This would probably be a good time to do so you don't forget. And once again, Dr. Blaze, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we will need to do this again so we can talk about some of the work that we're doing.
Absolutely, Kwame. I'm so honored to have you working with me on that project. So I will look forward to our next conversation where it'll be all about STEM.
Yes. Thank you so much, and hope you have a good night. Send my regards to your mother and the rest of your family.
Thank you. Same to you and your family, Kwame. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
And well, there you have it, people. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with Dr. Blades about the virtual STEM camp, signups are going to start next week, first week of June. So make sure you get a hold of Dr. Blades and to get more information about that. Now, I want to make a couple of announcements before we wrap up. So for those who have been following me for the past few weeks, you know that I've been doing a quarantine sale for both of my books, and this is the last week of the sale. So we have here my first book, Shape the Teacher Identity, 8 Lessons that help define the teacher in you. This is a great resource for any new teachers, education majors, first, second, third year teachers who are still trying to find a way in the classroom and to figure out a way to teach that's going to be authentic to them and the students that they service. You can get this on Amazon, but if you want the autographed copy, you can get that straight from me. And then we have the second book, the newest addition to the Identity Talk family, From Inaction to Inaction, Creating a New Normal for Urban Educators. This is also on Amazon, but if you want the autographed copy, you can get that from me as well. You can get both of these books for $25. So it's a 2 for $25 sale. We do accept Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal payments if you use those apps. So if you are interested, please make sure that you leave a comment in the section below or send me a DM either to my personal page, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, or the business page, Identity Talk Consultant LLC, and we can go from there. And then also, if you would like to be a guest on the show, please email me at identitytalk4educators@gmail.com. This is a platform for the unsung heroes of education. So if you know somebody who is making a huge impact in their community, and they don't have to be the traditional teacher in the classroom, they can be a community activist, they could be an athletic coach, they can be an adult educator, a parent, a child, young teen who is doing something transformative in the community. We want to get all of them on the show so they can share their stories. So if you know anybody that fits that description, encourage them to email me at identitytalk4educators@gmail.com, and we're going to give them a platform to share their story. And on that note, this concludes another episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live. I am your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. If this was your first time watching the show, I hope that you do come back next time for another episode. But until then, I wish you all a good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time very soon. All right, peace out, people.